Hi, my name is Bernd, and I'll show you really quickly how to take a web application and deploy it to the cloud using Azure App Service. Here we have a very simple MERN stack application. That means Mongo, Express, React, and Node. But these instructions also apply to other languages such as Python using the Flask framework. So let's take a look at this app. It's just a simple app with a database. Now we're not going to worry too much about the database part in this video, but we just want to deploy our web app that we have running locally already. Now, one thing you always want to do is make sure not to hard code any connection strings for databases and such things. So here in this project in db.js, just note that the database connection has been parameterized. It's an environment variable. That's a good practice because we can later inject the exact credentials for accessing the database as an environment variable. So you might want to do the same things with API keys and other such things. All right. So now I installed something called the Azure CLI. That's the command line interface. Here are the instructions for installing it. You can find that on docs.microsoft.com. And I have done so. So you could log into this by typing az-login. And then that will open your browser and ask you to authenticate with your Microsoft account. I've done that as well. So I'm ready to deploy my application via an easy command. So here in VS Code, you can see the Node application that we've been browsing, that we've been looking at here. In fact, I took this app and I already cloned this into my personal GitHub repo for handy use later. But we want to deploy this app, so note where the server.js is. That's the folder I'm in here in the terminal. And from this level, I can just type az web app up -n for name. I'll call it local hack day demo app deploy. And then I'll type -l for the location where I'm deploying this. Azure has multiple locations for data center regions. I'll deploy this one to West US. Now, importantly, you want to type --skew for the stock keeping unit, F1. That is the free tier. So that's what we want to specify. So if I run this, now we're seeing that it's creating an application with this particular name, and it's creating a new app service plan, which is basically like a VM that is going to host the app service. An app service is this managed software, this managed service where we just deploy the code for our application and everything. And this system sets everything up such that it spins up our application, configures the server to handle the traffic appropriately, and gives us a URL we can access easily. And that URL corresponds to the name that we've picked here. So it'll be local hack day demo app deploy .azurewebsites.net. That will ultimately be the URL. And this is going, so it is uploading now in a zip file the content of our application. And then in the cloud, it will perform a build of the application. So it will look at the packaged JSON file in Node, or in Python, for example, it will look at the requirements .txt file for all the Python dependencies. And once this completes, then our website will be up and running. All right, it's almost done here. And in the meantime, I said this database also has, this web application also has a database component. Now, this video is not about the database, but I do need to get the database connection information really quickly. So I'll just go there and grab the connection string for my database. Okay. And in a moment, I'll inject this database connection string information into my app. And the app has not been deployed yet, so I'm waiting for it. And it has finished. Okay, nice. Let's refresh this here. I think that was an old app that I had that I already deleted a moment ago. Okay, let me refresh this. And here's the local hack day demo app deploy. That's how I named it. And from here on, I will go ahead and inject this database credential as an environment variable. So in the Azure portal, that's where I'm at. I can now go to configuration, and in the configuration settings, that's where you insert something called an app setting. That is how you set environment variables inside Azure App Service. So here you could add your API keys or any other secrets that you definitely do not want to have in your code. Don't check in secrets into your GitHub repo, for example. That's not a good idea. So here, this one is called, let's see what the config file says. It's called db. And then the value will be the connection string that I got from the database. I'll save this. And that should take in just a second. And now what I'll do is I'll restart the application so that the node runtime picks up my environment variables. All right. And in a moment, that should be restarted. So let's go to the URL for this. I'll bring this up. I believe it's still restarting, perhaps. Let me see what the status is. Now, if you ever have any issues with the App Service application, then what you can do is take a look. Oh, here's the app. So it's up and running, by the way. But I'll show you in a moment how to troubleshoot if things are going wrong. So for example, here now I can type my name and I'll put an email address and I'll show you it's working successfully. So it connected to my database and it wrote the data to the database. And that's the application, very simple. Now, a couple of common things to look out for here is, for example, a common mistake that people make is that they hard code the port of their application. So you run an app locally on localhost and you might hard code a port like 8080, 5000, 3000 and whatnot. Well, that's not good because App Service needs to actually use its own port for this. So what you can see is, for example, in server.js, in this case, further down you can see they do it very cleverly. They say the port being used for the server is either the value of the environment variable port, and App Service automatically sets this environment variable. So if you can read that, that would be ideal. And it's saying use that, and if it doesn't exist, then use 3000. That's why locally it uses port 3000, but in the App Service environment, it does something else behind the scenes. Now, if you made the mistake of hard coding this, or if you really, really want to have this hard coded, okay, no problem. One thing you can do is similarly go in the app settings here, and you can create a new application setting named port, and then specify the number of the port that you hard coded, and then restart the app, and then everything should work as well. Now, if you don't like deploying the way we just did, there's a different way to deploy. So we can go to Deployment Center here, and then we can integrate with our GitHub repo or Azure repos. So I'm going to authorize this with my GitHub. Okay. Yep, so it's going to load my repos. And now I can continue. So you have different options here of deploying it directly from the repo. I have never used the GitHub Actions preview, so actually let's try this. I'm feeling lucky, like they say. Okay. The code is in this repo, in this organization, and the application was called MERN-CRUD. So let's take that and we deploy from the master branch. This is Node, and I don't know what Node version we're running, but let's pick Node 10.14 on App Service. Sure, it already must have detected this was Node, so that works for me. Let's continue, And what is this going to do? That's going to set up GitHub Actions for me with these things. Aha, it's my GitHub Actions file. Successfully set up GitHub Action build and deployment pipeline. Nice. Well, now I'm curious what it did to my repo. And it did, in fact, directly to my GitHub repo add the GitHub Actions workflow. So you can see the YAML file, how it was configured, and you can make changes to this. That's really amazing. First time I tried this and it worked like a charm. Now, what does that mean? That means now whenever we make changes to our application, using continuous integration and deployment, automatically the change will be built and pushed to App Service. So that's pretty nice. We have now this continuous integration. So we can just do the GitHub workflow of pushing our changes to GitHub and everything will work from there. No need to run a command locally and having to deal with the credentials between different users. All right, so like I said, the other thing we were going to do is how to troubleshoot. That's one important thing we need to examine. So take a look here. What we have is diagnose and solve problems on the left side. And if you are a CLI user, there is a command where you can type az web app logs log tail. Az web app log tail. Now you have to specify the resource group, and you got that when you deployed your app. So minus this awkward name, and then I'll specify the name of the app. And in my case, it's this one. And now I can get the recent logs for this application. Yep, the resource group was not found. So let me show up. I got the wrong name for the resource group. There we go. And here you can see the logs streaming, logs appearing. Yep, and it's all working, and you can see it getting requests. I'm changing this, etc. So, yep, you can see the application is working. So I quit the tailing of logs here, but in the portal you also have the option here in this diagnosis of problems. Let's say you got some 5xx errors, some server errors, right? You can click on that and then see this chatbot type thing will tell you, okay, what's going on, what you're seeing, what you want, and I'm saying, oh, I want application logs. And then it's giving you those, and you can see some issues. You can see app service starting up, and then you can see some common problems. Yep, and here you can see internally it started the server on a different port, 8080 for example. And the logs are a little bit behind, so don't worry if the request doesn't show up yet. It'll be about 2-3 minutes and then the requests are there. So just keep that in mind as you're troubleshooting. But this is the way to go for finding the logs for your application, figuring out what's going on. One other pro tip I will mention is there are times where your application might be very large. You have a lot of libraries you need to install, and deploying the application could be very slow as a result because all those libraries have to be installed. And in those cases, I do recommend using Deployment Center and that approach with GitHub Actions, for instance, or one of those other options. That would be the way to go. If you do want to use the AZ Web App up command, then I recommend increasing the app service plan to a paid tier, which has more performance. So you can do that by using the scale out settings here. Actually, sorry, I meant scale up. And I would go to production and then any of these ones, P1, V2, and so on. Downside is that this costs money. It doesn't use the free tier that you have, like the F1. And if you're not on the student offer, if you're using a credit card or a fixed credit as well, it's counting towards that as well. So it might charge your credit card. On the Azure for Students offer, it would just deplete your credit. So I would not recommend doing that. Instead, use Deployment Center and then use the GitHub Actions deployment method. If for some reason you need to change your deployment option here, you can always click disconnect at the top and then configure everything again from scratch, and it will work as expected. So these are the common tricks for deploying web applications to Azure with App Service, and hope you enjoy. All right, thank you.